Basketball, football, baseball. From Division I to Division III, it's time for College Sports Weekly with Don Macholis and Dan Underberg on the Wisconsin Sports Radio Network.
Yeah. We all mine. Oh, yeah. Come on.
All right, welcome in. It's College Sports Weekly live from the Wisconsin Sports Radio Network studios. Powered by Potawatomi Sportsbook. Don Macholis, along with Professor Dan Underberg. Daniel, good morning.
Good
to
morning,
have you back,
sir.
boss.
It's good to be back. How you been?
Yeah, I'm doing fine. It's a little bit nicer to be in person again.
Be in the same room.
In the same room, back where it all began 13 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But we've rebranded. We've tweaked things just a little bit, and here we go.
And we're almost better.
Oh, well,
yeah.
that remains to be seen.
We'll
Charlie
find out,
Houston is on the other side of the table. He'll be producing us. Charlie, I don't know how you drew the short straw, but welcome. Glad to have you on board.
This is a lot of fun. I like being a part of this. I like being a part of new stuff. I'm a D3 former football player myself, so it's cool to talk about the college sports, talk about D3 sports, get that representation out there.
Absolutely.
I'm excited.
Awesome. It's good to have you on board as we make our way through the next couple of hours here on the Wisconsin Sports Radio Network. We're going to get into some Badger talk here momentarily. We'll get into the D3 playoffs, which got underway last night. Some good games already. There is something, Daniel, about this time of the year, whether it's high school or college, you get the overtimes, the last-second shots, and then some of the reels that you see where, kids, and I call them kids, and I always say this, I mean no disrespect to anybody who's playing at the college level. At my age, you're a kid, but they'll put them on the court, the knees in a brace, and the other team's go ahead, take the shot,
right.
Or the manager gets the last 2 minutes to get into the game and suddenly hits a three. Those types of things, I think, are what makes sports so special, and one of the reasons why, at least, we love to celebrate everything from D1 to D3.
Yeah, absolutely. And then it's just the time of year because we're getting out of February.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Which
Right.
sucks, and we get out of that, and then you get this slow burn,
Right.
you get the tournament, you get the end of the regular season, you get the conference tournaments building up, and then by that time you're into the NCAAs, and then suddenly sports reappears again.
Yes.
It
comes out of hibernation.
Yeah, it really does. So
and we're going to be here all year long to talk about it, because once basketball concludes, we'll get into some college baseball, but the storylines, whether we're talking NIL, transfer portal, we'll start getting into spring practice with the Wisconsin Badgers. There's always something to talk about in the realm of college sports, and we hope that you'll hang with us, and we'll be the soundtrack for your Saturday mornings as you're running errands and doing whatever. You're out and about and dropping the kids off for practice or whatever it might be as you follow us on the Wisconsin Sports Network. Shout out to our friends up in Green Bay and Appleton on WNFL, and Wausau on 93.9 The Game, Duluth Superior at WDSM 710, and of course in Milwaukee at 1250 AM 105.7 FM, The Fan, all part of the Wisconsin Sports Network. Now, I need everybody to just kind of hang with me for about 45 to 60 seconds, because we got to give some thank yous. We just do. I mean, to be back here at the Wisconsin Sports Radio Network is a blessing, I think, to us. This is year 13, again, with a slight little rebrand, Dan. It's good to be here again. So we got to thank Jason Bjorson and Steve Sparky Pfeiffer, and, of course, Charlie here on the other side of the table for having us back and giving us a little bit of time, again, to talk some college sports. We also got to thank the Polish pipe bomb, Jeff Orlowski. I'll never say never. You never say never with the pipe bomb. So we want to give a shout out to our guy, because we love our guy, and we hope all is well. Want to thank Tim Scott, Doug Russell, Hunter Baumgart, Billy Schmidt, Armin Sarian, Drew Olson, Kevin Brandt, Dave Gasper, Nick Bruzewitz, Spencer Williams, and of course Mike McGivern, who was really instrumental.
The guy that got us started
and got us going here, 13 years ago. Want to thank Ken Snyder at Waterstone Bank, Eric Ulvag at Sewer Ninjas, who have been sponsors of our show over the 13 years. Just good people. We're blessed to be doing this. Can't wait to now kick this thing back into gear. And again, talking college sports with my friend over there. And for us, Daniel, I think we got to thank our families, my wife, Elizabeth, your wife, Jill, who I think we always say they let us out of the house. I think they watch us walk out of the house yelling and having a little party that they get
And then
some
they breathe,
downtime
yes.
without us. But we thank them as well for their support through all of these years. So, all right, let's shift and do what we're here to talk about. And let's talk some college sports as the Badgers will close out things today as they'll be on the road. But before we get to that, let's go back to Wednesday night when they closed out the regular season at home at the Kohl Center. First thing, can I tell you how happy I was to sit there and watch that game and see two coaches in shirt and ties? Just old school shirt and ties, suits, like it was. I miss those days. I'm done with the jogging suits and everything else that coaches roll in now. To see two guys dressed in shirts and ties and suits, coaching their respective teams. Get off my lawn. I'm the old guy.
I'm going to stand on your lawn.
Okay.
I don't care what they wear, but I'm also, the suit, you wear your suit and tie, wear your jogging shirt. I don't care. But what I laugh at is the $500, $700 suits that some guy, like Patino.
Yeah.
Come on, man.
Well,
okay.
Yeah, but
it's your brand.
Patino's choice in suits, though, that'll make you change your mind and say, go ahead and wear the jogging suit for goodness.
Yeah, at least it's unique. I think that's the biggest thing. It's him.
Yeah.
It's him.
Yeah,
and that's something.
It's his brand.
But there are times the man looks like he should be welcoming the plane on Fantasy Island. And for those that don't remember, you can go back on YouTube and check that one out. But okay, let's go back to
Nicely
Wednesday.
done.
Thank you. Senior night in Madison, a nice win against Maryland. I don't know how good, Dan, this defense is evolving into, or was it how bad Maryland is? Because Maryland could not protect the basketball whatsoever. It was watching almost like those junior high games that you've gone to with your own kids, and you see the kid who doesn't necessarily have the great ball handling skills cross the timeline, and somebody just walks up and snatches it. That happened several times in the game Wednesday night. I would love to believe that the defense now is evolving to where the offense is, but I'm not quite sure. And I think we'll get that tested today, so to speak, when they play Purdue.
Yeah, the truth is somewhere in the middle, because I think you're looking at two teams. The Wisconsin Badgers are working to ascend and get their way into a better seed, and obviously have their final game, their senior night. There's going to be energy to that room a little bit. Whereas when you're looking at Maryland, they're fighting not to sink.
Yeah.
And they're still sinking anyways. Right. There's just not much left. It's not the season that the Terrapins were expecting to have. Buzz Williams coming in, they spent a little money on getting some of the athletes back in there, and it just hasn't turned out. And now you almost get the feeling like, let's shut this down a little bit. It feels a little NBA-ish, So
a little tanking going on in the NCAA.
Yeah.
I'm looking at it also from the standpoint, and this will be something I think as time goes on here, we can talk about and almost make it a segment, because we constantly hear we need coaches fired, right? It's not going our way. Can we make a change? Maryland made a change and they brought in a name, and it's not working as of now. That's not to say next year, the year after, things won't turn around. But just because you make a change does not necessarily mean your program is going to evolve to the next level like you're hoping it will, even with somebody who's been established. So, again, we go back to Wednesday. Braden Carrington, he's so good from beyond the arc right now. Let's hope that continues. He had 18. Nick Boyd, who's endeared himself to the Badger base in his 1 year coming out of the transfer portal, had 13. Austin Rapp, who after the illness is kind of getting his legs underneath him, he's had 11. Blackwell, JB looked like JB of old on Wednesday night, like he had his rhythm back. But Charlie's got the clip here. I became just a sentimental mush piece of work when this took place, because again, it's senior night.
Not going to forget that sentimental mush.
Write that one down in the archives. Thank you, Daniel. We watch Isaac Gard check in, and then this happened. This clip is courtesy of the Badger men's basketball social media team. It will feature obviously Matt LePay, and that's courtesy of Learfield Sports and the Wisconsin Badger Sports Network. Go ahead.
Guard logo 3 left side. Got it! Isaac Guard with a logo 3 on senior night. Isaac hit his 3. He'll come out and he'll wave to the crowd. As Dad waits for him.
That was so good. I mean, we've said it time and time again. Matt LePay is simply the best.
He is the best.
He is just the best. But to have all of that on senior night, you know, Guard said after the game that when he put Isaac in, the guys stepped off to the side and decided to run a play for him.
Mm-hmm.
It hits back iron. He comes down. And as we were talking about before we came on the air, I mean, he's literally closer to Dad on the sideline than he was the 3-point line, thought about it. And then just that beautiful high arcing. It was
majestic.
It was, look at you on a Saturday morning coming up with majestic.
That shot was beautiful.
Nice. But it was. And it was one of those storylines again that you get in college sports that I think endear all of us who are around the table right now to the sport, whether it's basketball, football, baseball, whatever it is.
Yeah, you get caught up in kind of the NIL professionalization dark side of sports, particularly D1 college, and then you see those moments kind of pop up every now and again. You noted it, earlier, the opportunity for the kid to score at the end that maybe has been the manager, the one that has been hurt. People giving the opportunities for people, and then that could be high school, it can be college, it can be whatever it is. This is just an opportunity, and give Isaac Guard props for taking the shot, because where he was, I think he just figured, well, I've got nothing to lose, I'm going to take it, right? There's
Dad's pulling me out in a second. I might as well check
one
this thing
shot,
out.
I'm going to take it, and he did. And those are the moments that you remember why you like college sports, because quite honestly, outside of tournament time and moments like that, we're really not focused as fans on, kind of what college was in those experiences. Now we're getting caught up in the business side.
Yeah.
And it's nice to get reminded, kind of like what the NCAA, football playoffs gave us,
right?
To remember that this is still just a great experience in terms of just watching love of a game. And you got a chance to see that there.
And Charlie, I think what's been unique as far as Greg Gard's manipulation, I'll call it that way, of the transfer portal, is the way he's been able to bring players in like Carrington and have them meld together in such a way that by the end of the season, you look at this team like they've been playing 3-4 years together. They look so entrenched as far as the culture goes and what we do as Wisconsin basketball goes. I need something here. Wow.
Mountain Dew's right there.
Mountain Dew's right here. I need some more caffeine. But you get where I'm going. Like the culture is just been maintained even in the midst of the way college sports has gone transactionally.
Right. And I think with the University of Wisconsin, just kind of that culture that they've built over time, and that's courtesy of Greg Gard and Bo Ryan even before him, but their ability to have these players come in and just find themselves comfortable almost immediately every single time. And you hear it in this clip too for Isaac Guard, that the fans, the stadium is just rocking for these players that don't touch the court. And you don't get that everywhere nowadays. We were talking about this on Wisconsin Sports Daily with Steve Sparky Pfeiffer from 2 to 5 during the week here on the network. But it just feels like that these 4-year players, if you are to stay at a university for 4 or 5 years, more than that, with some of these different rules, different abilities to get into the college game again, it feels like some of these schools just don't treat these seniors with the same kind of respect that they may have done 10 years ago or so. It was a female player for the Tennessee Volunteers. She had the senior night. She comes in the last 15 seconds of the game, isn't happy that she only comes in at the last 15 seconds because the stadium's empty. It's a blowout game. She feels like she doesn't get respected and then steps away from the program. I don't know if that is 100% the fair response from the player, but at the same time, I get where she's coming from. And I feels like the University of Wisconsin still gives that type of love, that type of honor to these players that stay 4 years. Even the guys that are coming for 1 year, they're treated like they've been here for 4 years every single time.
Absolutely. And Dan, the bench, when you saw the bench, when you saw like Carrington running up, or Nick Boyd running up to guard and kind of and guard like, okay, easy, we still got to finish this game. And Blackwell's over in the corner along the baseline, throwing the towel around and jumping up and down, and the whole group just enjoying what Isaac got to experience in that moment. To me, spelled everything anybody needs to know about the culture at UW.
Yeah, it was what you want, minus the Nolan Winters injury regarding for a senior night. It's a blowout win. You get to empty the bench, but it's also kind of one of those indicators a little bit of the culture of the team, where everybody was bought in and enjoying the experience. And, they took that straight into the locker room and had a great time. It's just, but I'll also go back to kind of the culture of where does that come from? You've got guard from Bo Ryan, both D3 guys that have kind of worked their way up and understand kind of the sacrifice and kind of the humility it takes to kind of enjoy these moments that might be lost a little bit. And I don't think they're out there going, well, college basketball is going this way. We're going to go old school and enjoy this a little bit. I don't think that's part of how they're made up, but it's clearly kind of a connection point where Greg Gard has that connection to basketball through the different levels. And that's what he references from time to time. And that's, I think, why that works at Wisconsin and why he's been able to learn year to year how to, I don't know, Charlie, just kind of indoctrinate or, new players into the team.
Part of it is he's recruiting the players that already have that type of personality to be indoctrinated into that team. I mean, Nick Boyd comes in, again, as kind of an unselfish player looking to let John Blackwell kind of take that lead because he's that incumbent type of star for this team. He checked the NBA draft, didn't really work out for him. But then Nick Boyd comes in and is just so easily able to then take the reins from maybe a John Blackwell, or let John Blackwell take the reins, or let a Braden Carrington take the reins at points. Again, it's just all built so well by Greg Gard that it's, when you know the players that well before you even bring them into the university, it's going to work every time, it feels like.
There's two things that occur that I think Gard doesn't get enough credit for within the program, and I'm hoping that at least they get to the Sweet 16 this year, because otherwise it will overshadow, the naysayers will overshadow what's taken place. One, and we've said it when we were doing this as a podcast, Dan, it's a version of speed dating when you're doing the transfer portal, right? Guys announce they go into transfer portal. There are going to be other teams that want to grab their services for that year, like what we saw with Nick Boyd. So you've got this speed dating element. Like, I've already got to know X, Y, and Z about said player, and will that player fit as to what we're trying to do? Then once you get those players in, I don't know if we call it speed dating, speed culture, whatever we want to trademark the phrase, but now in a short period of time, I've got to envelop those guys into what we do. A lot of, in the old school version, that was the freshman year, right? Here's, as a freshman, this is how we do things. This is, the seniors are teaching the freshmen, and then they carry the torch throughout their career with the team, and they pass it down, as they become upperclassmen. You don't have that opportunity anymore. You hope you keep a couple of guys like a Nolan Winter, which we'll talk about in a moment, unfortunately, as you noted, with the injury. But you're bringing guys in, and you have to develop their assimilation into that culture really, really quick.
Yeah, you got to get cohesive really quick. And, it's one of the things that gets even more, I guess, difficult because of the transactional nature of fans now. I was guilty of looking at this team on paper before they played and thinking, oh, this is going to be a fantastic year, because you hear all the accolades about who they have brought in. But as Gard said, as he was going through the season, whatever happened to building, getting a team to work together to building, and he wasn't criticizing his team. He was criticizing the pressure coming from fans, coming from media about when does this, because, this team isn't as good as we thought, and Gard has to take responsibility for this. All this, I'm sure there were, Celery Hall had fire Gard signs up there as soon as they could, but and then he gets to this place, as he has done in the past, where he's able, February-ish,
right,
able to. It's not a perfect system. Sometimes the Badgers have fallen apart a little bit in February. Sometimes they've really picked it up, and it feels like the back half of the season is when they really figured things out. And like you said, Carrington and Boyd and
Mhm.
Blackwell and all these guys stepping up in different times, and teammates letting other teammates shine at the right moment. Those are the moments that point to Greg Gard and say, okay, he got it. Just breathe, Wisconsin Nation.
Yeah.
Just give him a moment, because more often than not, Greg Gard is going to be successful at this type of project.
And Charlie, to Dan's point, think back in the beginning of the season when you had Nolan Winter at the press conference breaking into tears like, this is not how we play basketball. This is not what we do. This isn't how we're going to remain in this state for the remainder of the year. We're better than this. And the tears and the passion. And I think of Nick Boyd, like patting him on the back, kind of looking at him like, yeah, okay, we get it. You know, you believe in this team. You die, you bleed red and white, so to speak, you know, for this particular team. And I think, to Dan's point, Charlie, we've watched this team since that point. That to me is kind of a benchmark in the season when Nolan got to that press conference and broke down. And since then, we've seen the growth both on and off the floor.
Right. And not only just the growth, but just the emotion that this team is showing too. From that point when he was so willing to show that emotion at that press conference and be able to break down and say, this is not who we are. I feel like I've seen the team play with so much more energy too. Yeah. Again, Nick Boyd, you talk about patting him on the back, but just being there. There's guys who aren't statistically that type of contributor who are always out there just with the energy. Andrew Rohde, a guy I went to high school with, so that's really cool to see him on the Wisconsin Badger court, but he's out there constantly not putting up stuff in the stat sheet, but just egging these guys on and getting them going and being that kind of energy for this team. And you have that throughout the roster. Again, it all kind of comes back to Greg Gard and the way that he's gone about picking these players for this team and saying that, you know what, we have this slow start, but at the same time, we can pick ourselves back up, and all these guys buy into that and believe that. And that is just such a great testament to the coaching staff.
All right. So before we get to a break real quick, let's talk about Nolan Winter, who went down with the injury, who was probably the only kind of dark cloud that occurred on Wednesday night as a part of senior night. And he was going in for a jam. And what broke my heart a little bit was I'm constantly on Nolan Winter. Like, when you're 7 foot, dunk the basketball. Like all of us would love, as we stand at 5'11", 5'11 3/4, and I might be honest, but you know, we want to dunk the basketball. And there's so many times where he's like finessing and finger rolling, and finally he had a head of steam and he dunks the basketball, and the guy got underneath him from Maryland and he twists that ankle. So what we know today is what we can get out of Madison is simply has a lower body injury, that we know it's we believe it to be an ankle, whether it's a high ankle sprain or what I'll call a normal ankle sprain, for lack of a better medical term to use. But do you yeah, that ain't happening. Do you even worry about him, Professor, in the Big Ten tournament as far as play goes, or do you let that thing heal and get him ready for the big dance? So I'll start with you and then I'll throw it to Charlie before we get to break.
Yeah. Right now they're slated to have their first game on Thursday.
Yeah.
And do that, which is, I think, helpful. I think it's a wonderful opportunity. If it's a normal ankle sprain, then maybe he has a better chance to recover and come back. You never know. Number one, he's 22, 23 years old. He's going to recover easier than any of us are, right? Putting that in. But, he's an important part of this team. He starts because he's the best guy to start. So not that I think Wisconsin can go, deep enough to find the right person that can step in. But, you don't want to rush him back regardless. You hope he can come back for the NCAA tournament and feel like he's ready to go and battle underneath, which is after that moment you guys were mentioning when he broke down, he got tougher. He got tougher. He worked a lot harder underneath and did some different things. It impacted him. So I'm hoping that he's back for the NCAA tournament, Charlie, but I guess there's a little part of me that this is, I hate to say it this way, much ado about nothing.
Okay.
That he's going to be healthy enough to come back on Thursday.
Well, I mean, for the Big Ten tournament, I don't think in my mind it's necessary to bring him back. As much as you'd like to see the Badgers get that run in that tournament, try to boost their NCAA tournament seed as much as possible, I just feel like you would want to keep that as safe as possible in that situation. This team can score enough. This team has played aggressive enough defense lately that you can see a world where they can still make that type of run without that type of big man in the paint for them. At the same time, I think you need him for the NCAA tournament. Everything about this is that you have to make sure he's ready for that. And if that means missing that Big Ten tournament, then that means missing that.
I would love to see him, if he's healthy, get a few minutes even in on that Thursday game just to keep the legs going, right? Just to have the game experience. But as far as major minutes, I'll put it in that fashion, rest him. Let's make sure he's at full strength or as best he can be to 100% going into the NCAA tournament. All right, let's take a break. Want to remind you, you can join us on the NicoletLaw.com talk and text line at 414-677-1250. You'll find us on socials at Wisconsin Sports Radio. After the break, the D3 tournament is underway. A number of all the first round games happened yesterday. So we'll get you up to speed on the 13 teams from the state of Wisconsin that were dancing, who won, who lost. And then at around 9:40, 9:45, the money train is back with us. So TA will join us and get you some lines that you might be able to use if you're heading down to Potawatomi or online with any of the app services that are there. The money train will be on hand again, 9:40, 9:45. Let's get to a break. This is College Sports Weekly here on Wisconsin Sports Radio. All right, welcome back in. It's College Sports Weekly here on the Wisconsin Sports Radio Network. Don Wachillis, along with the Professor Dan Underberg.
You know, can I just say something really quick?
Oh, boy. Go ahead.
No, it's good. It's
okay.
good.
All right.
Been doing the podcast for a little while.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I missed the bump music.
Thank you.
I missed the bump music. You are the leading expert in Milwaukee when it comes to good bump music.
Well, I appreciate that.
You're an artist when it comes to that.
Charlie Usen. I was going to introduce Charlie too right there.
I feel like I'm going to learn a lot of good music during this. I'm 24, so a lot of this stuff is like brand new to me. So I'm going to learn a lot. I'm ready.
You need to be ready because we're going deep with some of these cuts. But thank you, Professor. Welcome. I appreciate that. Let's talk some D3 first round action that took place yesterday, and we had, as we noted going into the break, 13 teams from the state of Wisconsin that qualified for the big dance at the Division III level. We're going to talk a little bit about the NPI when Jeff Ligney joins us at 10 o'clock. Jeff is the commissioner of the NACC, and Jeff knows all when it comes to the NCAA. He just does. He's just like a walking encyclopedia, and I love having Jeff on because he's got knowledge in so many different facets when we talk about different elements within college sports. So Jeff will join us then. But Dan, going into this, the NPI, I think we were a little skeptical, a little hesitant. We weren't sure how is this all going to play out. But the NPI, I think, was, I hate to use the word gracious, but it's unbiased in the fact that it looked at, especially within the WIAC, how good that conference is, what they're doing as far as beating one another up through the season, but then also taking into account the level of non-conference games that these teams have played and were winning as well, so that when you see 13 teams again total getting into the big dance through an analytic type of format, it just speaks at how good Division III sports is in the state of Wisconsin.
It really does. And I had my doubts because you fall into old habits.
Right.
About, we'll use the WIAC as an example and how they beat each other up. And you're used to seeing 3 or 4 teams go in there. And then, they're probably more in the L column than any one of those coaches want to see. And you begin to see you begin to assume how other conferences are going to line up with their records, and you don't expect that there's going to be some type of function that's going to allow for a D3 conference like WIAC to step up because of its competitiveness.
Yeah,
it's
right.
And you forget about that. So when Jeff comes on later, it's going to be really interesting to hear his perspectives on that, because we had talked about it. I thought maybe we might get 2 teams in from the men's side.
Yep.
And instead it ended up being the 4, and that's the right call. Yep. That's the right call, because it is, if it's not the best conference in men's basketball D3, it's got to be top 3. So they made the right decision on that, but it's always going to be open for debate.
All right, let's run through some scores. We'll start with the women, since they had 9 teams qualify for the big dance. Carroll beats DePauw 74-67. Wisconsin Lutheran over St. Mary's 65-47. The University of Wisconsin Lacrosse on the women's side beats LaGrange 78-52. Cole beats Platteville 69-51. Concordia Moorhead over UW Superior 73-61. Probably one of the games of the opening round. Ripon and UW River Falls, they'll go to overtime. Ripon wins 84-81. Oshkosh over Webster 53-37. You know why Webster lost, right? Because they short. UW Whitewater over Transylvania 70.
Sparky's calling now. He's calling right now.
Come on, that was a great dad joke right there. Anyhow, let's go back, however, to that Carroll game as they played DePauw and they win 74-67. Natalie Gricius last night, 39 points on 12 of 24, 11 of 13 from the foul line. Carroll, a team in Waukesha, small college, much like Wisconsin Lutheran, that has an outstanding women's basketball program that has certainly evolved. Wisconsin Lutheran's evolved a little bit earlier, I'll say,
Yeah,
in
right.
their growth.
Mhm.
Carroll now is one of those teams in southeastern Wisconsin that's really starting to take those steps.
Carroll and the athletic department and the university as a whole are, kind of reinvesting in themselves and doing different things. And, you see this, it's funny, Don, Charlie, when you see a team kind of pop up the way Carroll has in women's basketball, you do a little deeper dive and you realize that it feels like the whole athletics program is starting to kind of pump up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
We saw that probably the best example of that is Whitewater, and you start to see them to the point where they're this juggernaut right now. Kind of everybody kind of looks at that one, but Carroll has boosted up, and it's fun to watch because it's this nice, quaint little university
Mm-hmm.
in the middle of Waukesha that if you're not sure where it is, you can pass through it, but it has a great program, and now they're starting to see the fruits of that development.
I always think when I look at Carroll, like you took a major university, you washed it and you threw it in the dryer and just shrunk it down, right? I mean, like you said, quaint's a great word. It's a great small university that is really starting to excel. So then, Charlie, what do we get tonight, at least in that opening round, or now moving into the second round with hopefully a trip to the Sweet 16? This is where the regionality of the pairings drive me nuts. And I get it. This is not going to change because NCAA Division III is not Division I. There's a mileage thing that we can talk about with Jeff at the top of the next hour. But because now lacrosse will play Carroll, and you got two state teams getting ready to go at it, Charlie, and you really want to see both of them play somebody else with a chance to go to the Sweet 16. But nonetheless, later today, a great matchup in Waukesha.
100%. And I'm a CCIW guy. I went to Elmhurst University, like I mentioned before. So Carroll was one of our rivals. So I kind of lend to cheering for them a little bit in this matchup over the WEAC teams. You talk about the WEAC and how strong they are and how competitive they can be, especially just throughout all athletics. But in the CCIW, especially in the recent 5-6 years or so, the basketball in that conference has just been phenomenal. And you see the way a lot of these teams start uplifting each other by having that type of competition. I know Elmhurst has a little bit of a down year this year, but 3 years ago, they were in the national championship game. So this is something where Carroll, at that point, as a university, men's, women's side, in this case, women's side, when you get to that point, I think, again, once you hit this tournament, it just gives you the extra boost when you have so much great competition around you.
On the men's side, Platteville and Stevens Point fall in their opening round matchups, but UW Whitewater gets an 85-76 win over Loras, and University of Wisconsin Lacrosse gets a 75-61 win over Hope. So both of those teams on the men's side will have an opportunity again today to win and move on to the Sweet 16. So hopefully next week when we're here on the air, that we'll be talking about a number of teams from the state of Wisconsin in the Sweet 16. One thing got to bring up before we get to break, because I know the money train will be waiting and the Tandy, you never know what the Radio Shack computer will do on any given
the
moment.
Matrix printer is just crazy right now, yeah.
But NYU, on the women's side, they beat Maine Farmington last night, 108-44. This is your two-time defending NCAA Division III champion. This team is on a run like you would hope any school could maybe get on, but this team hasn't lost in seemingly forever. And yesterday's win, Dan, brought about a record-tying affair, shall we say, with one of the legends in college sports.
Yeah, 88 wins in a row.
Yeah.
88. Just let that sink in. It doesn't matter what level of basketball, men's, women's, what division, what sport, doesn't matter.
Right.
88 wins in a row. What does that get you? You have tied the legendary John Wooden. You have tied the legendary UCLA Bruins basketball program for most consecutive wins. So they're one win away from breaking that record that has been there, it feels like forever.
Yeah.
And putting that in. So, props to NYU for that program, everything that they've accomplished and kind of done it under the radar. But they need to get some love with hopefully their next. I'm going to be honest with you. I want them to win. Let's break that record.
All right. Let's get to a break, because on the other side of the break, we're going to bring the money train in. It's Wisconsin Sports Network hosting the College Sports Weekly show, all powered by Potawatomi Sportsbook. Get me out of here, Charlie. I need a break.
Place your bets. Place your bets.
All right, welcome back in. It's College Sports Weekly live here on the Wisconsin Sports Radio Network as we're powered by the Potawatomi Sportsbook. We're going to jump to the Nicolay Law talk and text line and bring in one of our favorites. We bring in the money train. TA joins us. Good morning, boss.
Good morning, gentlemen. How are you?
We are
Been a long
doing
time.
Yes, we're doing fantastic. Good to have you. So for those who haven't been on board with us in the past, the money train joins us during football and basketball season. He gives us 3 picks plus a bonus pick that you can hopefully maybe head to Potawatomi again, open up your app and enjoy a Saturday. So T, let's go. Let's get this thing rolling.
All right, first game of the day is Arkansas is going into Missouri. Darius Acuff is out for Arkansas. He leads the SEC in points per game at 22.2. That's a lot of offense to lose. I'm going to take Missouri minus 2.5.
All right, game number 1, Missouri minus 2.5. Number 2, boss.
All right, Florida has won their last 10 straight. They're going into Rupp Arena. They're laying 6.5. I'm laying the 6.5 with the Gators. I think this team is fighting for that last number 1 spot. They're good. They already got the number 1 seed throughout the SEC. I think they're going to win today and quiet down the Rupp Arena crowd.
Wow. Okay. He's taking Florida there. We got a little upset special going on. Number 3, T.
All right. Vanderbilt's going into Tennessee. Ament is doubtful for Tennessee. Tennessee went into Vandy on the 22nd of last month, beat them at Vandy. Vandy catching 4.5 at Tennessee. I'm going to go with the Commodores of Vanderbilt plus the 4.5.
Vandy plus 4.5. Keep an eye on that Emmett kid who I know has T said is going to be out. There's a lot of people projecting he could be the draft pick for the Bucks in that first round, but that's something for a later date. All right, T,
Correct.
Bonus pick time, boss.
All right. The last mid-major team to go undefeated prior to yesterday was the Wichita State Shockers. They got Florida Atlantic. Hey, I dug deep for this one, gentlemen. Wichita, the Shockers are given 7.5. The Owls, they'd have to win the tournament. I don't see it happening. I think they're done after today. So I'm going to take the Shockers minus the 7.5. And let's go.
All right, so let's recap. Missouri, Florida, Vandy, Wichita.
Correct.
All right, T. As always, thanks. Good to have you back, bud.
It's nice to be back. I'll talk to you guys soon.
All right, that's the money train joining us on the Nicolay Law talk and text line. Let's get to some headlines as we make our way to the top of the hour. Again, at the top of the hour, we'll bring in Jeff Ligney, the commissioner of the NACC, and talk about all things Division III sports. And then a little bit later after Jeff, we'll get back to Division I, talk about the Badger matchup against Purdue. Marquette coming up at 11:30 this morning and recap the UWM season. But I want to talk about Miami of Ohio when we talk about headlines here, Daniel, and a team undefeated, a mid-major. There are a lot of question marks by, I'll say, the talking heads at the national level, whether or not they deserve to be in without having to win that AQ, the automatic qualifier within the conference tournament. Now, I went to Haslametrics, and if anybody, Dan turned me on to this, if anybody out there is an analytic geek when it comes to sports, go to Haslametrics, because the amount of information that is there is mind-numbing.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. But Haslametrics has Miami of Ohio at a 12 seed, which to me sounds right. So even the analytics are saying this is a team that belongs. What say you, Professor?
They're undefeated. They've gone an entire basketball season D1 undefeated. They belong in the NCAA tournament. I might even push them up a little bit higher, only because I think there's got to be a reward for doing all this. I mean, we've talked on different shows about the idea of how the regular season is minimized because of the conference tournaments, especially in the mid majors. When you have a team that has not had the blemish of a single loss, that they belong in the NCAA tournament. They've accomplished something profound. So put them in.
Yeah, I agree. Charlie, what do you think?
I'm all in on Miami, Ohio. I think it's what college sports is about letting these teams that have these great storylines have this opportunity to come in and be that Cinderella team, despite not being a Cinderella team, despite being a powerhouse in their own right, in their own conference. Come out and compete here and show on the big stage that you can still do.
Got a little chippy last night when they won. If you go into social media, the end of that game last night, with Miami of Ohio walking out against an arch rival and waving to the fan. It got a little ugly, which I liked. I liked it. It got a little chippy. Nothing got too dramatic.
No,
chippy is good
just,
as long as it doesn't lead to
feed the rivalry.
There you go. There you go. All right. We're up against the hour again. When we return, Jeff Ligney will join us. It's College Sports Weekly live from the Wisconsin Sports Radio Network. We're powered by Potawatomi Sportsbook, and we're back after the break.
basketball, football, baseball. From Division 1 to Division 3, it's time for College Sports Weekly with Dom Macholis and Dan Underberg on the Wisconsin Sports Radio Network.
All right, welcome back in. Hour number 2, College Sports Weekly, live from the Wisconsin Sports Radio Network studios, powered by Potawatomi Sportsbook. Don Wachilis, along with Professor Dan Underberg, Charlie Usen on the ones and twos, guiding us through these 2 hours. He's working hard today, Dan.
Yes,
He's just pulling us along.
Mm-hmm.
It's fun. It's like playing a video game.
Charlie should be sponsored by you. I got to stop there. I'm going to leave that alone right there. But, Charlie, we thank you so much for being a part of this program. Don't forget, you can be a part of the program on the Nicolay Law Talk and Text line, 414-677-1250. You can find us on socials at Wisconsin Sports Radio. Good to have WNFL in Green Bay and Appleton and Wausau. It's 93.9 The Game in Duluth Superior. It's 710 WDSM, and in the Milwaukee market, it's The Fan on 1250 and 105.7. And, of course, you can find us wherever you are on the Odyssey app. In just a sec, we'll bring in Jeff Ligney. He is the commissioner of the NACC to talk about some things happening not only at the D3 level, but at the D1 level. And Dan, Jeff is always good to have on because he's just so versed in all of the stuff in today's world of college athletics.
Yeah, you have to be in Jeff's role because so much of D3 is changing, just like it is throughout college athletics as a whole. And there are significant differences between D1 and D3 and all the transitions that have happened. So trying to maneuver your way through this, Jeff has also seen his conference kind of announced some changes as well in terms of who's in it, who's not. And it's a difficult job because you have to project and you're also you're reacting a lot. So.
Absolutely. I mean, the reaction part of it to me goes back to what we talked about with guard. It has to be done now so rapidly because we're in a landscape where things are ever changing. And we've seen it even within the court system, right? Because you can have a superior court or a district court, let's say in the Wisconsin realm, rule one way, go down to Alabama or Mississippi, and they rule the exact opposite. And when you look at the cases, they're almost verbatim as far as similarity goes. And because of it, I think sometimes we love to pick on the NCAA because so many times they deserve it. But for instance, there are instances that we see where the NCAA just steps back and goes, look, we're trying to enforce, but now I've got a court ruling this way and a court ruling this way. We have no idea which way to turn anymore. Now, it's their fault. They've set this up. They've put the plates on the table, right? But I also understand the frustration in the way things have gone lately.
Yeah, it's tricky because, and now if we're looking at the Trinity situation down there really quick, and the NCAA has now filed another lawsuit saying, wait a minute, we own the rights to make these decisions. This is not a court decision, which means there's probably just going to be another injunction, just something else to block that. But yeah, it's tricky. And you go back to what a conference commissioner has to do and just staying on top of all these things that are happening out of your control.
Right.
Responding and trying to work within the NCAA framework. And then you've got your colleges and your universities that are in the program that are, and rightfully so, protecting their brand, their organizations, and trying to do what's best for them on an athletic side, what's going to help them win more games, what's going to help them get more players, all that. And you're a conference commissioner that has to pull all those things in. So yeah, just the idea of holding that position when you have someone in that leadership position, it's very quick to get to that place of they should just do this, they should just do that.
Absolutely.
You can't because there's a domino effect that goes all the way through, and those dominoes have now gotten bigger and heavier, and they fall easier than they ever have in the past in the last 3 years.
I know in a couple of weeks, as basketball simmers down, once we get through the Final Four, I mean, there's some things on the football side I want to talk about as far as, the Power Five. We've got a couple of teams now jumping, conferences. We've got a couple of teams jumping, from the MAC to the Big Ten or the Mountain West, whatever the case may be. Those things come into play then where now I've got spots open. Where do I go now to pull other teams in? I think it's a little strange now that we're seeing in the MAC where we're having a team now come out of the West Coast. The MAC,
right.
I mean, when we hear coaches complain about travel, and we could do an entire 2 hours with our friend at UCLA complaining about travel. But we hear coaches talk about travel. My goodness, can you imagine on a Tuesday or Wednesday night when the four-letter network is highlighting MAC action to have a West Coast team now have to make that journey, or teams from the Midwest having to go out there? And we're not talking about a major Division I program. Right. This is going to be a little bit tricky, but yet from the MAC's perspective, the commissioner's perspective, I've got a slot now. We have to make sure our teams play X number of games, both in and out of conference. I've got to fill it. I'm going out and finding wherever I can a team to take now that spot. Once Northern Illinois, as they will this year, I'll call it jump ship.
Yeah, and it's tricky too when you're looking at a mid-major and you have that open slot. The other thing that you're trying to do is make sure that you want it to extend the footprint a little bit. You're trying to find as many media markets as you can that will help you develop and grow your brand, as for example, the MAC being the MAC. So it's trying to reinvest with the right programs. Probably these conferences have 3 or 4 to choose from,
right?
And picking the one that's most interested and can sit in on as well is going to be kind of the challenge moving forward. But then I think about, at what point now, and I think you're starting to see this a little bit, do these super conferences, are they getting too big? To the point where you've got as big as a footprint as you want marketing wise, but now you're starting to see cracks in the armor when it relates to competitiveness.
Sparky would know this better than I, but I'm starting to feel as if college conferences are going the route of NASCAR, where they're losing their regionality, right?
Yeah.
Big Ten.
Yeah.
We knew what the Big Ten was. And I'm not even talking about to the growth of it. I know we had to go out and get Rutgers because we need the New York market. We want USC and UCLA. We want the West Coast. That's all because of media rights. But the Big Ten was a locale. The SEC was a locale.
It was a culture.
Big 12, right?
Yeah, right.
There's things that are bought into those cultures that make it special. Now, I always felt in recent years that one of the reasons NASCAR has struggled a little bit as of late is because they lost their regionality. And in losing their regionality and going all over the place where it was really a Southern brand at one time. Yeah. And I know you got to come north at some point and race at these various tracks, but they lost their regionality. And that's where I think with some of this expansion that we're seeing, we're losing that from our conferences, which then just tells me, why don't we just cookie cutter this thing and create all new and regionalize some things and have the playoffs and everything else that goes into it.
Yeah, it's a good analogy because I look at that. There's the personality that NASCAR has in the South that it's supported that way, and there's a personality to the SEC. There was a personality to the PAC. There's definite personality to the Big Ten, and now what's happening is it gets watered down a little bit when you expand. And okay, it starts when the Big Ten expanded and took in kind of the 2 bigger ones. They took in Nebraska and they took in Penn State. Nebraska was a good fit. Penn State worked because it was such a prominent football program and it was close enough, right? Just within that you could do it. But then you chase the money. You chase the Marylands, you chase the Rutgers, you chase UCLA, you chase USC, you chase Washington, you chase Oregon. Programs, those last 4 still feel awkward when they come in and when
It
you
does.
see it and they tell you, hey, it's a Big Ten program. And, especially when it's Oregon versus Washington and I'm being sold that it's a Big Ten option. Not really, not for me.
Yeah.
They're kind of outliers on that one.
It's crazy. Now, let's shift gears just a little bit, because I think one of the poster children of what you were kind of describing is Cronin, the head coach at UCLA, who has done nothing but complain seemingly all season long. And I can't tell if the complaints are manifested by the travel, but of course UCLA had no problem taking the check from the Big Ten and knowing what they were getting into, right? But Cronin this year has complained so much. I just feel like he's a guy who's trying to get himself out of a contract. Like, it's not working out, and that could be another segment for weeks to come. Charlie, we good? We're good. Let's get to the Nicolay Law talk and text line and bring in the commissioner of the NACC. It's Jeff Ligney. Jeffrey, good morning, sir.
Good morning, Don. Good morning, Dan. Nice to see you guys.
Nice to see you as well. Thanks for getting up early on a Saturday morning and talking some college sports with us. So, Jeff, let's keep things general at first. If there was one storyline right now, whether it's Division 1, 2, or 3, that you think has been underrepresented, I'll say, in the media, that hasn't gotten traction yet, what would that storyline be, sir?
Well, it's something that you and I have been talking about. I think I sent you earlier this week, but I think people have the perception out there that major college athletics is booming right now. There's money everywhere coming in. And then the stories coming out recently of Big Ten schools like Rutgers losing $78 million this last year on college athletics in their athletic department. And now there's stories about how far Ohio State is in debt with their program right now. And if Ohio State can't make money in this model, who can? And that's it's not being represented. The donor fatigue, I think when NIL first all came out and this was a great idea and there was donors lining up, after a few years in, I think you're starting to see donor fatigue for NIL. The money is starting to dry up and there doesn't seem to be a lot of answers in sight. And I don't think we're covering this. We're talking about this nearly as much. There's money out there still. No one's going to go bankrupt in the short term, but it's coming unless changes come. And that, while that seems like a D1 problem, that's going to filter down to D3 eventually because we get so much funding from them. And that's what I'm really worried about.
Well, I'm curious if you want to put some insight on that. There's a story that came out 2 or 3 weeks ago about Texas Tech. And I don't know if this reflects donor fatigue or if this reflects something innovative, but now they're taking some of the sponsorship revenue that would generally be going directly into obviously the program, and maybe it's used to support, whether it's a football program or other elements of athletics. Now they're taking a percentage of that and putting it to help, basically helping to support, pay the athletes on that one. What's your take on that? Is that a sound system? Is that something that shouldn't be duplicated? What do you think?
Yeah, it feels like a short-term fix, Dan. I don't see that working long-term. And that's what colleges need right now is a long-term solution for NIL funding, not just NIL funding, but everything else, facilities and all the coaches' salaries. Like, there has to be some kind of funding to keep this going stable. TV contracts help, but there, as you can see, the escalating costs aren't covering everything, and there's only so much of that money to go around. I don't see that. The BYU model, who's also coming out right now, getting private equity funds. We've seen the Big Ten kind of dive into that. I think these are all dangerous areas, but I think this also, Dan, it's one more symptom of people grasping for anything right now to keep things going positively. So at Texas Tech, it sounds great. I think there's a lot of people looking around waiting to see if that actually works very well before everyone else dives in. And same thing with the BYU model. I think people are waiting to see how that turns out. But again, I think colleges right now, first and foremost are looking for someone to cap the costs, find some way to reel this in, to have some kind of salary cap, if that's what you want to call it, or something to kind of reel in the arms race that's gotten out of control.
Jeff, we got a text here on the Nicolay Law talk and text line from Paul in Caledonia. He says the dilution of these mega conferences will lead to the big players, Bama, OSU, Texas, taking a hard look at becoming independent. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I do think that's a possibility. And I don't think just a handful of schools. What I think you're going to see is at some point, someone's going to throw a model where you take the top 32, let's say, football programs in the country, and they just break off to form their own version of the NFL. And so we can get away from, because the ugly truth is the games that people don't want to watch and aren't watching. When Ohio State plays Rutgers, no one's watching that except Ohio State and Rutgers fans. And there's a model out there that's being pushed of this Super League or NFL type of model where these big teams, a team like Ohio State every week could be playing Texas, then USC, then Michigan, then Florida, then Alabama, then Georgia. You could have that kind of an NFL kind of schedule set up right now for those groups. And I think that would bring in money well beyond what they're looking at the moment. So I do think that's real. And I do think that's very much a possibility. Probably not till some of the lawsuits settle down, the House settlement in 10 years, but I think that's certainly on the horizon.
We're talking with Jeff Ligney. He's the commissioner of the NACC on the Nicolay Law talk and text line. Daniel.
The NFL model that you're talking about is interesting. And I think, yeah, it's a potential distant option in terms of doing that. But Don and I were talking about before you were able to get on, which was the loss of regionality with these the expansion of the conferences, right? We talked about the Big Ten and the expansion into the West Coast and what that means. And Don had a good comparison of, NASCAR and its regionality and how it's kind of lost some of its personality a little bit. Do you lose a little bit? Do you lose a lot of what college football is when you go into a mega system or a NFL light system that's being talked about?
I think so. I think there is something. You're going to lose some rivalries. You're going to lose some things. You could see where there would be some divisions in my home state. You could see where Michigan and Michigan State get separated, at some point. You can see some of those traditional rivalries. Auburn and Alabama, are they on the same level right now, or do they get separated? There's some of those traditional rivalries you will lose. But Dan, I will also say, that argument's been made with every change that's come to college athletics. And every time, the conference realignment right now, everyone said the same thing, and other than the California coaches complaining about the travel, you haven't seen it. And most fans follow their teams. That's the beauty of college athletics, unlike professional athletics, is fans don't necessarily follow teams because of players. They follow the institution. So it's a lot more permanent. It's a lot more stable, where professional leagues, most kids, when they're growing up, they log on, they latch onto a player. They latch onto a name and a face. And that becomes, growing up for me, that was Dale Murphy in the Atlanta Braves, right? That was my guy. That was, I followed the Braves because of Dale Murphy, not because of necessarily the Atlanta Braves. So I think you're going to see a little bit of that. So yes, there will be some, but I think fans will adjust the way we watch games now. It's on TV everywhere. It was a lot more important when there was a lot less TV coverage, the regional and the newspaper coverage and the local regional coverage. You'll lose a little bit of that, but I'm not sure. What I'm more worried about is when those top 32 teams go off, whatever they do, what do those next 32 schools do? What do they, is Wisconsin in those top 32? Are they not? And what happens if you're not? To me, that's a bigger concern than the regionality and losing the rivalries, some of which will happen.
So, Jeff, in transparency, Jeff and I and Brian Miller do the 3 on D3 podcast, which you can find on Spotify. And you and I were talking after we had taped our podcast this past week and talking about coaches, because even in the WIAC, we're seeing some coaching changes, let's say at UW La Crosse and UW River Falls, where they have gone up as far as divisions go. And those are the ones who get kind of the marquee, the headlines. But yet we're seeing, as you noted, a number of coaches leaving Division III programs to go to Division I, not to be the head coach, but to coach, so to speak. So I wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about that.
Yeah, and it's one of those things. It's the unintended consequence. In Division III, we want the Division I programs to do well. That means there's money flowing down to us. So we kind of really need Division I to perform well. But the trend we're seeing lately is just as you explained, and we've had a handful of coaches in the NAC take jobs at the Division I level. In basketball, we had a coach, head coach on the women's side in our league, go take a job with a prominent D1 school to become the third or fourth assistant. But still, she was able to, triple, quadruple her salary in that move and be able to focus just on basketball and coaching and not all the other stuff that our head coaches have to do. And with the money that's out there now in these programs, the assistant coaches, and the fact that the college world is realizing that some of these coaches in D3 can really coach. It doesn't matter where they're at. People are starting to and even D2 coaches now starting to jump up. The more opportunities now with the House settlement and getting rid of the other settlement with the volunteer coaches. Now we've expanded coaching opportunities at the Division I level. The money is there. I don't know how we can stop, but it's and again, in the long term, it may be all good, but in the short term, Division III is losing some really good coaches. We've seen in a lot of these sports that are getting the opportunities now that, again, we kind of work to get to this level so people realize coaches can coach in D3, and now we can't really sit back here and complain that it's biting us, but that's what we've been fighting for since, I've gotten into D3 is the attention about how good we are and how we can coach. And now it's hard to sit back and complain that people in the D1 world have just figured that out.
Yeah. I'm curious, you're talking about, and a lot of it is about how do we bring different revenue and into D3 and just to kind of support what's going on. Are there sports out there right now that you think have a better opportunity, and not that they're going to be as big as football and basketball, but are there other sports that D3 can throw its weight into a little bit more? Is it volleyball? Is it, I don't know. Is it baseball? Are there sports out there that we think, okay, this should be a better revenue model for us than it has in the past?
Yeah, it's tough. It's not just Division III. You have to think regionally too, and what sports are popular and what sport. I would love to say, nationally, college baseball and college softball have exploded in the last 10, 15 years. You see the popularity of the College World Series for both baseball and softball getting much larger TV contracts on ESPN. The amount of attention that ESPN puts into those shows now is, in those weeks are just crazy. The amount of money and talent they're putting there, that just shows you that it's just growing. But up here regionally, baseball and softball just aren't going to take off just because of the weather. And our high school student athletes here that tend to be really good in those sports tend to leave and go down south to play their college ball. So I don't know if here, in the upper Midwest, if you're going to see sports like baseball and softball take off like they have down south, California, Florida, places like that. So I do think it's, one that I'm really keeping my eye on that I think both on the men's and women's side is going to be flag football. I think you're going to see this. I think they're at the youth and high school level, you're going to see there's so many parents right now that are afraid of concussions and the injuries, or maybe here in Wisconsin, we're seeing schools that struggle to put 11-man tackle football teams on the field, that maybe flag football is going to start growing and booming in popularity. This isn't my idea or my thought, but I've seen it and agreed with a lot of people that once flag football hits the Olympics here in 2028, it's going to explode. And I've been really trying to get our folks. We now have 6 schools that will have women's flag football starting next year. We have 4 currently. I think that's going to explode. And I think there's going to be a men's version of it that you're going to see that's, 7-on-7 or 8-on-8. It's going to be kind of a thing that you're going to see the explosion in that as well. It's a lot cheaper to do. It's fun. It's quick. It's high scoring. I think it's going to be attractive to fans to watch. So those are the two. Flag football is one that I really think that we need to invest in now. Get in on the ground floor, set your programs, because I think it's going to explode in the next 5 years.
Jeff, we're up against a break. Thank you so much for jumping on this Saturday, and we'll always be in contact because it's always great catching up with you and talking about what's happening in the world of college sports. Have yourself a great Saturday, boss.
Thanks to the two of you. Anytime. Love being on.
All right, that's Jeff Ligney, the commissioner of the Northern Atlantic Collegiate Conference, otherwise known as the NACC. He joined us on the Nicolay Law Talk and Text line. We got to get to a break. On the other side of the break, let's look ahead as today the Badgers and Marquette are in action. And then a little bit later, Charlie gets to hand out his first shovel, and we'll do that after we get to this aforementioned break. It's College Sports Weekly, live from the Wisconsin Sports Radio Network studios, powered by Potawatomi Sportsbook.
and a little.
All right, welcome back in. College Sports Weekly, live from the Wisconsin Sports Radio Network studios, powered by Potawatomi Sportsbook. I did everything Zach Brown said except the chicken fry last night. So today's program being brought to you by ibuprofen. All right, so we'll move from there into some college basketball, which is taking place today. Let's go back, talk about the Badgers, Dan, as they'll wrap up the regular season against Purdue. It's a big game to wrap up the regular season on the road and start getting yourself prepped for what's about to happen, which is survive in advance, because that's what the tournament is. You can play the best game, so can someone else. It's about who can survive the 40 minutes and advance to the next round. So in my mind, and again, Greg Gard has done this much longer, and he's much more adept to this than anything I can present, but I'm looking at this game, even maybe without a Nolan Winter, like, guys, now is the time we start thinking about what are we going to do once we get to the tournament. Use this game as a prep. Use the Big Ten tournament as a prep, because as we said in the first segment, my fear is everything that has happened, I think that is relevant and good with Wisconsin basketball will fall by the wayside if this team doesn't get to a Sweet 16.
Yeah, that's just kind of the transactional, again, building into what we thought this team is going to be at the beginning of the season and seeing what they are capable of, some of the games that they have won. You look at this team and say, yeah, they could do a Sweet 16. You also look at this team sometimes and think, yeah, they could also get eliminated.
Now, I'll go back to me, and I think I said this, Charlie, with Sparky when you guys had me on the other day. The perfect example of what you just said, Dan, was that West Coast trip where you play Oregon, you come out on fire, and then you lay an egg the final 20 minutes, and then you rebound against Washington and look phenomenal, which then carried over, in my mind, to the game at the Kohl Center against Maryland.
Right.
But you can't have the Oregon game, right? Once we get to survive in advance.
And we've seen that with Wisconsin, where they struggle with buildings that bring energy, where they can't match that energy. And so now what's happening? This is a statement game for me for Wisconsin. I don't need them to have a win, but they cannot get blown out, when they go to West Lafayette this evening, because again, it's senior night. It's the number 4 team in the nation, or sorry, not number 4, but top 10.
Yeah.
Purdue is a good team. And this is a team that should, on paper, should be able to beat Wisconsin at home. But we've seen Wisconsin walk out of Illinois with wins. We've seen them do different upsets. We've seen them walk out of Ann Arbor with a win. So it's not impossible for the Badgers to walk out at the end of the evening with a win against Purdue, but they've got to be all in. And yeah, you're down Nolan Winter. That's an issue, right? But we've seen Wisconsin overcome things all the time. Where I'm at with this, Don, is that this game for me is a statement game, because there are still positions left to be lost in the NCAA tournament in terms of seeding. And you remember the last thing you saw. And at this point, the last thing you see, if it's a blowout against Purdue, where you lose,
right, then
that's going to leave a stain.
And Charlie, right now, DraftKings has Purdue as a 8.5-point favorite. And to go with what Dan was talking about, we would love to see the Badgers get off that 8-9 slot, because you win that game, knock on whatever, and then suddenly you're potentially against the number 1 seed right away. You want to avoid that particular matchup. So a statement game, to what Dan was saying, I think is very important, and extremely important by the last thing that you saw. Again, to piggyback off of what you said, if many people think that this Purdue team is an 8.5-point favorite at home, you keep it close or get a win, I think you're opening the eyes of a lot of those committee members once we get to that Sunday.
I guess at the same time, though, I watched how the rankings looked after Wisconsin beat Michigan, saw how it looked after they beat Michigan State, saw how it looked after Illinois. The highest they get is 24, and it feels like you still don't get that same kind of respect. So unless it's a win, in my mind, I feel like you don't get that type of respect, even with that 8.5-point favorite. I still think Wisconsin has to go out there and, like they've done throughout the season, again, just prove who they are to a lot of these teams, because at the same time that they're beating these huge teams, they're losing games that they shouldn't.
That's
true.
They're going out there not competing games that they should be able to just wipe the floor with the other team. You have to be more consistent. And I think the way that you put that on a national stage is by winning this game, not by losing.
That's a fair point. I think all three of us would agree that it's a statement game to wrap up the regular season, which is kind of nice to know that a regular season game's got some impact, right? There are a couple of other teams, I think if they lost, I'll just pick on Arizona. If Arizona were to lose their last regular season game after already winning the regular season championship in the Big 12, be like, okay. Now they'll just, reboot and get ready for tournament play because they seemingly have the number one seed locked up in one of the regions. It's different for the Badgers. Let's pivot because about a half hour after we wrap up here, Marquette will take the floor at home as they'll take on UConn. Not necessarily maybe the way you want to end the regular season if you're Marquette. It's been a long year. It's a team with a lot of youth that I think Shaka Smart, Dan's got to figure out, how do I keep this group together? And now we're starting to hear again some trickling coming out of the Marquette Golden Eagle camp that maybe Shaka's more willing going into next season of grabbing a couple of people out of the portal. I just think today, hang on, be competitive against a UConn team that many now think could be a number one seed, which may be arguable depending on how Florida ends up playing here in the next couple of games. But anyhow, I think we can all agree that Connecticut's a good team.
Yeah, they're in the top seed conversation, and this is not a game where, Mr. Hurley would accept a loss. He's not going to accept a loss to anyone, but
Mr. Hurley,
yeah,
he's coaching, Dan. He's not coming through the door. I get it though. I'd refer to him as Mr. also.
Yeah, also. So, but it's just, this is a game that obviously, and UConn's playing well. They're going to want to come in and just kind of finish off the regular season, right, look straight ahead into the Big East tournament. I think one of the most important elements for Marquette in their recent history is now going to be in the next 6 to 8 weeks, because if it is true that maybe Marquette is willing to look more towards the transfer portal a little bit, it's all going to be dependent upon who they can keep.
True.
From this young group. And we've talked about this to the point where we know that every coach now has to re-recruit their team over and over and over again every year. And now Shaka Smart, he's got some guys on that team, some young guys with some talent, and you can bet there are other programs out there right now thinking, well, maybe we can get them to come over. And I look at that and I think to myself, when you look at Marquette, it's 2 or 3 of them that I would think, yeah, I'd like to bring them over, see if I can get them to sit the bench for a year, but play and then have an impact with us in the future. So for me, Marquette's issue now is how good is Shaka Smart at keeping their guy, and is there a guy that can fit into the Marquette culture the same way Greg Gard has been able to find guys that can fit into the Wisconsin culture?
And that's such a good point that Dan makes, Charlie. I mean, the stepping stone, the block, the foundation, you just look west. Gard has shown us how to do it. And I think Gard has done a great job again of bringing in a couple of transfer portal players and mixing them in with the recruits in the midst of developing. Shaka is about as charismatic as they come on the recruiting trail. I think he'd be able to do it if he can adjust his philosophy.
I think so. And I think when I look at the biggest difference between a Greg Gard and a Shaka Smart, I feel like Greg Gard goes out and finds these players that are going to already fit into his system, are going to fit into the culture of the Wisconsin Badgers, where I think Shaka Smart, and part of the reason why he is so good at recruiting these freshman players, the ones out of high school, is because he's trying to get guys that are going to come in and he can mold into the system versus guys that are already like built for that system. He's done a really good job of that. He's really good at finding those personalities too, but it's just a little bit different of a plan that way. I think this offseason, like you guys have talked about, is going to be huge for the perception of just Shaka Smart in general. If he can't keep these freshmen around after a up and down season for this Marquette team, then that is going to be a problem. If he can't bring in anybody else in order to get some veteran presence on this team, that will also fit into that scheme that this team is running. Again, like we're talking about with Greg Gard, and Shaka Smart can adjust if those guys aren't immediately in that. It's going to be a lot of question marks for a coach. I think last year, a lot of people were calling the best coach in the country, and how quickly it changes to all of a sudden this.
And it's much like when we were talking about some of the Division III coaches that are stepping out and going up in rank. You got to hit while the iron is hot, right? Like in River Falls and lacrosse, guys who have won, been consistent, have moved up in rank as far as Division II, Division I goes. The same thing happens in basketball, because to Charlie's point, Shaka was the man last year, and now it's like, well, Shaka, you gotta change, otherwise it's going to go past.
Let's flip this coin a little bit, though. So we're talking about the coaches. Let's talk about the players. You talk about striking while the iron's hot. Nigel James Jr.
Yeah.
Okay.
Awesome.
That's, for me, that's the guy you have to do everything you can to keep.
Right.
Okay. You can build. You believe you can build. He's athletic. He's got a lot of talent in that body. There's a lot of things that he can do right. But that's the one individual, maybe more than anybody else in that program, where you gotta believe other people are looking at him, right? And
absolutely.
So he's got a responsibility transactionally, strike where the iron's hot. This is where it gets really interesting for Marquette, for Shaka.
And it's going to be interesting to see what their NIL will provide a player of that caliber in order to keep. Real quick, because we got to get to a break. UWM wrapped up their season Horizon League loss. They'll finish 12-20 on the year. Unfortunately for UWM, it was one of those years they were just plagued by way too many injuries. So we hope that many of those guys will get healthy. We know Bart Lundy is the best of the best, friend to show, and that they'll rebound, no pun intended, and be back strong next year. UW Green Bay, Doug Gottlieb got the Phoenix, their first conference tourney win in quite some time, so they'll be back at it tomorrow against Northern Kentucky, once again in the Horizon League tournament. We'll get to a break. On the other side of the break, Charlie gets to hand out a shovel. We make monumental radio history on a Saturday morning. It's College Sports Weekly, live from the Wisconsin Sports Radio Network studios. We're powered by the Potawatomi Sportsbook. Oh, it feels good
Feels
to hear
great.
that
I know I'm
music
not
and
supposed
get
to be
ready.
dancing. I'm supposed to be
Get
chair
ready
dancing,
to
but I can't
hand
help
out
it.
some shovels. It's College Sports Weekly live from the Wisconsin Sports Radio Network studios, powered by the Potawatomi Sportsbook. So, Charlie, get ready. I'm going to let the professor kick it off.
All right.
As he'll hand out the first shovel, and then we need like a marching band or something to come through as Charlie hands out his first shovel on this inaugural episode of College Sports Weekly. But go ahead, Professor.
All right, Charlie, let me see if I've already screwed you up, because I'm taking the low hanging fruit on this one. It's easy. I'm
Okay.
going Isaac Gard
Okay.
on his big three, and just get the moment that he gave us, the moment that the Gard family gave us in that win against Maryland. It could have gone. It would have been a good night regardless, but that cherry on top of the cake with that 3-point and just that, that sport moment,
Yes.
I guess is what I would talk about, that we cling on to is what was a big one. So Isaac Gard, thank you for that moment. And you get my first shovel back on the show.
So he gets his jersey encased in a frame.
Yep.
He's, I think, has or working towards his master's degree. And now he's got a shovel.
Now
Let's
he's got
go.
a shovel.
The
What's more
trifecta?
important?
The
Fill up
trifecta.
the trophy case.
Yeah.
Easy.
All right.
Your
Charlie, let's go.
You said we can go negative with this.
You
right?
go
I can
negative.
go.
Absolutely.
Right out of the chute.
I'm somebody who enjoys, a little bit of fighting in sports, a little bit of that intensity. If we head over to the Sun Belt Women's Tournament, Coastal Carolina and South Alabama got into a huge brawl at the end of the game, so much so that they knocked over the referee in the middle of the fight, just going completely at it, just absolutely insane. I love the intensity, especially in a tournament like that. And it's just, again, it puts something like that on a bigger stage. While it's not a good thing, it's still cool to see that intensity. If I had to give a good one, though, I don't know how honest he's being, but AJ Dybansa, the projected #1 overall pick out of BYU, went on an interview yesterday and said he's thinking about staying another year in college basketball and staying around with BYU. His mom wants him to finish his degree. Again, I don't know how honest he is about that. Going #1 in the draft is pretty good, but I'll give him a shovel for at least saying that. People won't even say that nowadays.
That's good job.
Thank you,
Charlie. Step it up. All right.
Okay, follow up.
All right. I will follow up.
Sorry if I stole two.
No, that's okay, because I want to go back to the AJ thing
Yeah.
before we get up out of here today. But my shovel goes to Moran Lanning, who is the head women's coach at the University of Wisconsin Lacrosse, who's playing Carroll today on a bid to try to get to the Sweet 16. Coach, before the WIAC tournament on a Sunday, gave birth to a healthy baby. So congratulations to Coach. And then with a first-round bye, was back on the bench that Friday to coach the Eagles into semis and then their first WIAC conference tournament victory before we got to the big dance. You know what? Coaches are always talking about, we're family. I need commitment. You're amongst one another.
Yep.
Blah, blah, blah. All the coach speak that you get.
Well,
There-
guess what?
There
Lacrosse-
ain't a player on that team right now that can say anything about nothing when it comes
Oh,
to
you're
coach.
having a bad day.
And what she went through. So there's where my first shovel goes. So let's go back to the AJ thing, Charlie. I don't think it's that far-fetched to have somebody like him say, I want to come back, not only because mom says, yep, I'd love for you to get your degree, all well and good, but now here's the other aspect of the money that these
There you go.
players are
Yep.
getting at the collegiate level. You don't have to go pro after a year, right? Even if you're top 1, 2, or 3, you don't have to go pro, because some of these guys, not all, some of these guys are going to make more in 1 year of college ball than they will in 1 year as far as their rookie contract goes once they get to the league.
I just feel like isn't the dream always to make it to the league when you have that opportunity, especially as a potential #1 overall pick? That feels like almost crazy to me that he's the one saying that. I know he's making this absurd amount of money as a freshman. At the same time, isn't he going to end up making more with everything that's happening at the NBA level?
That's
Yeah, go ahead, Dan.
no, it's tricky because it just depends again where they get drafted, and I think with the NFL it's always about the second contract, right? And I
Yeah.
think that's, you want to start the NBA as quickly as you can and get your first contract to get through that to get into your second one. So yeah, you're measuring that out. But hey, if you're loving where you are, stick with it.
And on that, let's wrap up week #1 and our return back here to the Wisconsin Sports Network. Our thanks to Jeff Ligney for joining us in hour #2. Charlie, thank you. Week
It's been
one
a
in
lot
the
of
books.
fun.
Yep.
Good to have you.
Excited
Good to
for
have
this journey.
Good to have the professor along as well. And our thanks to you for joining us. It's a College Sports Weekly. We're back in 6 and 22 right here as we're powered by the Potawatomi Sportsbook.